But yeah,
that's what I was saying to Scott. We were talking about like our industries and like how we have to grow, or like the idea of like long-term retirement. And so, dude, at this point, if someone wants to sit on my cake for OnlyFans, like, let's go. Like, I'm fucking tired. Like, let's go. If that's gonna make, because it's gonna make more money than anything else. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it.
And welcome to a new episode of Kill of the Week. We're sitting here at Tattooed Moms, which is now becoming like our home port for shooting these things, apparently.
Pretty much.
Because the only other one that we shot in person was also done at Tattooed Moms over at the bar. But now we're sitting here in the back room of it, inside go-karts, which is kind of their neat little niche at Tattooed Moms here. So I'm one of your hosts. I'm Brandon. You are?
I'm Jill.
And we're sitting here with
Mike.
And Mike, what film did you pick for us today?
I picked Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell.
And what kill from that?
Well, I picked the intestine vomit scene. So.
Intestine vomit scene.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about like what it is and why you picked that movie or that clip.
So in the scene, you have this two couples that are making out in a quiet little spot, and they happen to catch a glimpse of this ghostly apparition of a priest, and they instantly lock eyes, and she just starts crying blood and throwing up her intestines. I picked it probably because, one, the movie, I would say, is a zombie movie, and very rarely do you see the supernatural elements in a zombie film, and I thought that stuck out to me, but also just the fact this lady was just throwing up her intestines just blew my mind when I saw it as a young kid. So, yeah.
Now, how old were you when you saw it?
I was probably like 5 or 6, so in my family, like, I grew up on horror movies, especially zombie movies. On my mom's side of the family, that's where I saw Dawn of the Dead. I saw Evil Dead. I saw Argento's Demons, all that stuff. I started at a very young age, and I would say like my horror genre choice would be zombie. I very much enjoy zombie films.
Right. And you saw that on obviously VHS.
Oh yeah,
from way back in the day. So
I saw it grittier than what you can see it on now. So it was on a what do you call it, it was like recorded off TV.
Oh, okay.
My grandfather was like my grandfather was a hardcore pirater back in the day. So any horror movie I ever seen was on a VHS tape that was taping over something else. So.
Oh god, I just imagine nice wedding dance and then the fucking intestine popping up with that. Yeah. Because we watched it on Tubi. Okay. Because neither of us watched it prior. Mm. We're familiar with Fulchi, but we'd never seen it. This one, I knew it as the other title, which was It wasn't Gates of Hell, right?
City of the Living Dead.
Well, we watched it as City of the Living Dead.
Okay.
But I knew it from the other title, which was Gates of Hell.
Gates of Hell, yeah.
And when I saw
Why does it have two titles?
Usually American and Italian when it goes overseas kind of
so
thing.
I don't know how true it is, but I had heard before that the reason for changing it was because in America how Christianity is such a big thing. They felt the name was too blasphemous or something like that, and then they switched it to City of the Living Dead. I don't know how true that part is, but It could also just be a regional thing, sort of like when movies come out in Japan and they have a whole different title to go along with their translation and stuff. So, but I still call it Gates of Hell. My first DVD copy of it, it was a ripped copy, and I labeled it Gates of Hell because I was just like, it's such a better name than City of the Living Dead, and I feel like when you hear, I'm watching Gates of Hell, you don't think of zombies, and that's another thing that kind of pulled me into. It's a very different form of zombie movie, it's really good.
Was this your gateway into zombie movies?
No, the very first zombie movie I ever saw was Dawn of the Dead. And then and it's so funny too, because when I was a kid, I was such a scaredy cat that I honestly couldn't even get through a single zombie movie without having an actual panic attack. Mm-hmm. And now that's all I watch. I mean, it's pretty much to a religious point now that's that's usually always running either on my cell phone. I'm watching something, or on at home I'm always watching a zombie movie. But
so what were your thoughts going into it? Since we watched this movie for the first time like a day or two before recording the interview and sitting down with it. So like, what did you think, Jill?
I mean, I had no knowledge of like the style of the movie or anything else. Like I said, like I didn't really know much of like Italian horror or any types of like regional horror things. I've always just like watched it as horror. So like looking at it from different eyes of like, it was obnoxious in a wonderful way where it's just like, okay, I'm watching this and like being confused and like, why are they making so much eye contact with the camera? Why are they zooming on the eye so much? Like, it was a lot of questions. And it eventually, like, started making sense, but it was so out of the norm that it was, like, memorable to, like, watch something that was just weird. Because I think these days I'm really bored with content of movies and I'm sick of everything blends. So this one was kind of out of the ordinary where it was making me question things. I was much more aware of what was happening. The kill specifically was hilarious. I laughed so hard watching it, and like the dummy is just like pouring out of her mouth and I'm just laughing the whole time. It was just amazing. Like I don't know. I watched it and it was like, of course Mike would pick this. Like, yeah, this makes sense because everyone's kills that they pick in the series, it really fits their personality. And that one was like, of course you'd pick this.
I appreciate it.
It was very nice. Yeah, it was obnoxious.
Yeah. My first viewing, I fucking loved it because like, I love just 80s horror in general and Italian style horror. Like I enjoy Fulci's other work. I just never saw this one. And like Zombie and everything else that he's done. And like I think like going into it, I thought it was like funny, but I could imagine like putting yourself in your place of being like 5 or 6, watching it on like a gritty VHS tape and just being like, oh fuck, like this is the most horrifying thing ever. This like fake ass Christopher Lee priest going around. And, like,
well, I think like in the beginning, like when you see like it was the priest hanging in the very beginning and you like go through the shot of her eye, like those types of movies where you kind of set the tone immediately. It really prepares you for what you're going to get into. And so that, for one, was just like a beautiful shot of like going through her eye and all of that. So I immediately knew like kind of what we were going to get into. And I was like, all right, this is going to be artsy and kind of strange.
And like that's one thing you'll get out of Italian horror. You'll get beautiful shots, amazing lighting, and sick music. The score for this
I was going to say, the music is just so good.
Was it Goblin?
So it's one of the members from Goblin.
Okay.
Who he consistently does he did all of the Fulci films like Beyond. He did was it Beyond, Zombie? He did. I'm pretty sure he did. It was the House by the Cemetery, right? House by the Cemetery.
That was the third one.
The third one.
Yeah.
Because I also I'm terrible with the names and sometimes I get my Argentos mixed up with my Fulcis.
It's not hard to do.
But yeah, a lot of the Italian horror they use this guy. He did a lot of the scores and stuff like that. Goblin is another famous Italian band who did all of like the Goblin did Argento stuff and did Romero. Yeah. And just great, like the music, it just sets that mood. And one of the things that I absolutely love in this movie particularly is so after the hanging and then you hear the wind and then you hear the moaning in the wind and that stuff. When I was a kid, that would I would be like shitting bricks just hearing the wind through the trees and hearing that like light rustling, and then it's just you hear the moan, and it's just that's terrifying to me because it's like you hear it and you don't see it, and then it's just like boom, they just kind of like
Especially because like they pick it up too, because I feel like it was like subtle, and then it just got that full blown ear piercing wind.
Yeah,
well, I think that's always my thing with most movies. I feel like I'm more scared of what's hiding in the dark than actually seeing the monster. So I feel like with this movie, it had the slow build. Like, even like in the specific kill we're talking about, like you see her eyes, she's staring, and then she's starting to cry blood. Like you're waiting, something's coming, but you don't know what it is yet.
Yeah,
and it just kind of made the actual kill that much more dramatic. In this case, slightly comical to me because it just like went on for like one of those things. Like one slap might be scary, but like 10 slaps is hilarious. Yeah, and it became like when it starts, you're like, okay, that's kind of scary, and then it just kept going out of her mouth. I'm like, okay, this is kind of amazing.
They made it a point to show like every last bit of her intestines to come out,
and it just switches into the dummy, and you're just like, and it just keeps going, and it just. I loved it.
But yeah, because I was doing research on trying to like figure out. I was like, oh, maybe they have some behind the scenes stuff and like kind of figure out like how they did their kills. There wasn't much that they had. They didn't even have like, I guess even like back then they didn't have the budget for it or do it. But like doing research, I found like all the effects stuff was done by two guys, Gino Di Rossi and Franco Ruffini. I'm assuming is how you pronounce those names. And
it must sound much more Italian than that.
Ruffini and shit like that.
Yeah, you're right. The name is with the hand.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you enunciate. You go with the rhythm of the wrist. Flagged for racism. But it was just like those two guys that did like all the effects in this movie. And like the scene when the guts start first pouring out, that was the actress Daniela Doria was actually had what was it? That
it was veal intestines.
Veal intestines in her mouth and pushing
immediate,
out
like to start.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's why like when we were watching it, I was like, look at her fucking lips, like she's like puckering her lips because like she's tasting raw veal.
Well, that's usually like a lot of low budget horror movies. You can always see like right before they spit up blood, their mouth is randomly closed or they just look like they swallowed something, and I'm like, okay, like we know it's coming, but it doesn't even matter.
Most notable for that is Freddy versus Jason for me. When the dude's like fake Jack Black is running through the cornfield, and he's like, you can see in his mouth, he's like, and he gets this thing through his back and spits it up.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
it's we get the effect, like we know, and we've done it ourselves. But I think that was kind of fun with like watching these movies and with like our perspective of making horror movies, like imagining that process of shoving the intestines and shoving all the things from the other side. It just made me laugh.
And like for how long that poor girl was doing it for, because like I can
that's not even to say how many takes she had.
Yeah,
you imagine like, all right, put the thing back in your mouth. We're going again. Like it was perfect. Like
between that and then they would cut to the dummy for the last part when it was just like the geyser rolling out. Like
funny as hell. I mean, it's like the effects of the dummy. I also like we've talked before about like when movies were made or how they were intended to be seen, the quality difference. Like not every movie does well with high definition in today's world of like these old movies. So like maybe the mannequin, the body double that they used of like might have looked more realistic when you watched it back then.
Oh yeah, when you get it in that grain.
It's like, like between the grain and a smaller screen, like some things are just not meant to be seen the way we're watching it now. So when I watched it, I was like, okay, this is like ridiculous, but it's also kind of just makes it a part of like that's why like we love trauma. Like some of the things you just got to go with it and laugh. Like it was hilarious, but I almost wanted it to go on even longer, just like even like an obscene amount of things.
Sure if they had the screen time, they would have.
Like it went on and then it just kept going, and I was like, how much more is going to come out of
the boyfriend's reaction?
Yeah,
because like watching him like, ugh.
But that was kind of the thing. They stayed on it. They didn't cut away. It's just like a straight shot of a fountain of just like shit coming out of her mouth. And
it worked. Like that was the thing. Like it worked.
It was nauseating and it was amazing.
I think the other part of that too, which really got me, was the crying blood scene. Like they did so good. Like it actually looks like it's coming out of her eyes.
I wish I knew how they did that, because like there was no jump cut or anything. It was like nothing there, closed, boom.
So the last time I was watching it, I was trying to look, and if you notice, her hair is perfectly placed right around the corners of her eyes. And I think they probably had blood tubing like right there. Okay. So just lined up perfectly with her like eye line. So once they started pouring that blood, it went directly into like her eye. Her waterline. It just looks so good.
Like there was like a couple things that I noticed that were like a lot of the kills were seamless, which I was like really surprised. Like they did do like a couple like cutaways to like the dummies and stuff like that, but it wasn't as bad. That were like much more seamless. But the one bit that I saw that wasn't seamless that I fucking cried at was in the very beginning when the detective is talking to them and the book went on fire and you saw the flame just reversed from the top. I just died because like you can tell they just like flipped it like really quickly.
It was there's just so many there's so many weird things that just happen and you're like, why? But at the same time, you just kind of let it happen and you just enjoy it for what it is. And you know the what am I thinking of, the bit with the maggots, and it's just Fulchi just lets it all go.
Yeah,
man.
but that when you were just like, oh, maybe they had like 2 worms.
Well, yeah, because like when they showed like the baby scene when Bob, we're gonna talk about Bob.
Oh my god!
When Bob sees like that decomposed baby. And like we're looking at it, we're like, okay, like that's creepy, that's cool. And you just see the one worm wiggles, like, oh, they only have like the one worm to like sell it. And then as it pans up, you see more.
Also, that baby looked like it was made out of chewed bubble gum.
It really did. Yeah. I like my mind went to Eraserhead like automatically with like the baby, and I was like, oh, like I wonder if they hit up Lynch or something. Like you had this like weird decomposing baby in your movie.
Yeah, it was so gross looking, and there was a lot of things that wasn't like in your face as to why it was happening, but I think that whole bit with the baby has something to do with the priest.
Oh, okay.
Because
why he like killed himself.
Why he killed himself. So I feel like I remember reading something about it. Like he either molested a child or had something to do with this baby or something like that, and that's why he killed himself.
See, I thought it was because like where that cemetery was like the gates of hell essentially. So I thought it was like he was just getting possessed by whatever was like there. Yeah. Like that was the takeaway that I got from it. Like, oh, there's this presence here that's driving this guy mad. Kind of thing. That's what
I didn't even question. I was like, okay, cool. The priest is hanging himself. Like I didn't even like think. I was like, because it was in the beginning, so I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't need to know what led him there. I just thought this was the jumping off point for the tone of the movie, and it wasn't really like necessary to know. I mean, like in my perspective, I was like, okay, maybe it's not necessary to know why he's hanging himself. It's just.
It's such a dramatic thing, like a priest hangs himself.
Well, that was a very dramatic tone to show. Yeah. It was such an extreme. And what was the year that this came out?
1980. It probably started filming maybe like 78,
77 maybe.
So it's always something like to think of like what like our today's shock value is very different than like in the 80s and everything else. So, like that must have been like intense to watch. Oh yeah,
especially
and, like, to see.
Especially during that time where like. Like I was saying earlier, like Christianity was like at its peak, and everyone was smiting the almighty name and stuff like that. So it was just like, it was definitely a big thing to see at that time. Like,
for sure.
And like I said, it's just, I still to this day don't know the reason why, he killed himself. But the turn of events happened in unison because like I think they briefly say like because it happens on Halloween, so it's like the gateway between how like on All Hallows Eve it's like the veil between us and the spiritual world is at its thinnest. So he hangs himself on Halloween, and then they have until All Souls Day to close the gates. Yeah. So it's like there's that whole spiritual, like supernatural element that ties in, and you're kind of like, why? Like, but then that's when they make the notion to the Book of Enoch and stuff like that, and they talk about the end of time. So it's like there's all those small things that aren't like in your face in the film, but like it's still really good.
Yeah, like it was semi story and plot heavy versus not, like because like Fulchi especially was known for gore and splatter and things like that, and like with it ending, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, watch the fucking movie because I'm just going to ruin the ending because it ends on that note. They don't close it in time, and that's what leads into the following film for Beyond and things like that. And like when I was researching it and like the story, because I know like Fulci also wrote it, he was I saw he was heavily inspired by H.P. Lovecraft and Color Out of Space in particular. And I'm like trying to think, I'm like, what elements of Color Out of Space are like in this movie aside from this spiritual or necessarily extraterrestrial being essentially coming into it. And like you can get like a glimpse of that, especially like if you watch like the newer one that comes out, or the newer one that came out with Nicolas Cage, and it's plot and not plot heavy at the same time. It seemed like this was his, I don't want to say it was like his first one because this came out after Zombie. This was him, I guess, leaning more towards into like trying to build, because he built a trilogy. He had a whole trilogy with this series. So I guess he wanted to make it like an overall arcing thing, like his Star Wars of zombies, essentially.
Yeah, I must say, I have not gotten a chance to see the Beyond.
No. Okay.
I haven't seen the Beyond. I know like plot premise of it.
It's like a mental asylum.
Yeah. Or no, wait, is it a hotel?
Is it a hotel?
I thought it was a hotel, and
I know nothing.
Yeah, it's I remember it as a kid, but like I can't remember if I saw it. Like I remember seeing I recognized the zombies in it because I remember there was this one guy that was absolutely terrifying in that movie.
The homie with the mustache?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was just like so turned off the fact that they looked like real like dead bodies, and I was just like, oh, like, and I just never got a chance to actually see it. But it's on my list, especially now that
it is a hotel.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I
thought mental asylum.
Maybe there's like a plot twist with that. Like maybe it used to be an asylum, switched to a hotel or something like that. Because that kind of sounds like something.
Well, I always enjoy like with every zombie movie, the zombies always look so different. Every style, every version. Like half of this movie felt more like a Dracula movie than a zombie movie to me. It was so like
it was fake Christopher Lee.
Well, it's like because it took me a while to like understand. Like I think I was going because I'd never seen it, and this was completely out of my realm. That it was waiting for the typical zombie, waiting for the typical storyline. Like this was so different than every other zombie movie that you've seen. So it was so fun to be like, is he a zombie or is he Dracula? Like what is this? And like that slow burn of like everyone starting with the crying blood and that process of like it actually kind of reminded me. I had a connection to Ghost Ship because I love that scene when like they cut through all the bodies and that moment of calm before they all start falling off. So that's what I kept feeling when we kept seeing the crying blood, where it's just like this slow pause as you wait for the chaos, and as especially with the kill that you chose, that it starts so kind of calm and slightly beautiful with like the crying blood, and it just was creepy in its own right, and then she just cuts to just vomiting her entire intestines, and that's like. I feel like in today's world, we're kind of just muted by a lot of that. It's so oversaturated with body counts and extremes, and like, especially like, I love Terrifier, but like, it's just such a, for the sake of gore and the sake of what you can do, that this was such a calmer take on it. It was so much more like powerful because it wasn't every other scene someone wasn't dying. It wasn't as obnoxious.
Yeah. And there was like that build to it too. Yeah. There was always that like slow build leaning towards that next death.
And I think like both styles have their place in the universe, but this was kind of a nice like refresher of like a different style. It wasn't as obnoxious. It wasn't like today's horror. I knew you were going to pick some kind of zombie because that's you. And that's
I had to. I was telling Brandon earlier. I was like I had a couple movies like in mind because I was just like, you know, there's so many good ones that I've seen. Obviously, you guys know Dawn of the Dead is like my favorite movie of all time, and there's a lot of really good ones there. And then I was just trying to think of something that like not necessarily like it's more like something that maybe most people haven't heard of, you know. And I feel like this movie is kind of falls in that bracket. Like, I feel like a lot of people probably haven't heard of this, and you know, and I think it's a good opportunity for, you know, people who watch, you know, will be able to, you know, I'm going to go check out this movie now, you know, I want to watch this dummy throw up a mile of intestines.
Well, I think by our description, you got to watch it. It's obnoxious, and then you watch it again because that scene was ridiculous.
The main selling point of this movie, not only like the gore is great, every aspect of gore is great in this movie. Every kill in this movie is great, except for one, and this was the main selling point for me that sold me on this whole movie. We got to talk about Bob.
Every other minute, Brandon's just screaming, Bob!
Every time.
Like the whole time with Brandon and Bob.
And here's the problem. The dude who played Bob was great. The actor who played Bob.
Fucking name.
Let me get his name.
There's something with the name of Bob. That's just comical.
It takes away from everything. Like, Bob, because like, when Giovanni Lombardo Radice, there you go, plays Bob. And
that's a cooler name, though.
That is such a cool name. R.I.P. died 2023. Oh my God, he died on your birthday. Damn. April 27th. That's a
Thanks for knowing my birthday. Really proud of you.
But the thing about Bob is like it's such a shame what happened to this guy. He's being framed, or not even framed. He's suspected of killing all these people, like in there, and then like he finally gets a little bit of a brief moment of just chill when he's like in this car, and luckily like a friend of his finds him, and it's like her dad's car, and she jumps right to like, oh my god, like my dad can't let you see. You want some weed? Like, the jump is so good. But like the thing about Bob in general, which is why I find it so funny, is because it's a name you can't take seriously.
No.
I love Twin Peaks, but the fact that like Bob being the killer, I have such a hard time with that. And it all started, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. The name Bob for me all started with The Outsiders. In school, we read The Outsiders, and then we watched the movie and we compared the two. And
Bob.
The part when Sherry is talking with Ponyboy and like talking about what happened to Johnny Cake when he got like hurt and things like that, and she's like, he killed Bob, and it's just like, how do you expect anyone to take it seriously? Sorry to all the Bobs out there and Roberts.
I think I was expecting. Well,
Bob.
no, there's a difference. Robert is a different person. Bobby is a different person. Bob is a whole other thing. So I kind of was surprised. Like, this is Italian horror, right?
Yeah.
So like, why was it not like a more Italian, whatever insert Italian name here? Like, Bob didn't feel like it fit. And like some of it, like I laughed really hard through some of the horrendous dubbing that they did. So, which was amazing. But no, I think it's hilarious. But that's where I was like, where the hell did Bob? Like, was that a weird translation from something? Or how did they land on Bob?
What's kind of funny is, so even though it's an Italian horror film, but this is their take on an American film. So Bob is like an American name. So they're just like, Bob.
Yeah.
And
so it's kind of like saying like John Smith is like a typical name.
So it's like that's kind
that
of
makes it really special. Like, okay, were they making fun of American horror, or was
really
this
don't
like?
know.
See, I have mixed feelings. I kind of feel like they were making fun of us, but at the same time, like
I don't
the jokes
think
on us.
were,
Like, I don't know.
I was impressed because it's supposed to take place in like New York.
So
part of it's
Dunwich, I believe it. So part of it's in New York, and then the other. So Dunwich is actually supposed to be in Massachusetts, I believe.
I had more like British vibes from it.
That's kind of how I felt.
It definitely had that feel.
But like the actual filming location was in New Orleans.
Was it?
They filmed in Louisiana. Yeah, they filmed in like Louisiana and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
Well, now I'm kind of interested in that idea of like them taking their perspective of American culture, of like coming up with that name. But like you were explaining to me the idea of like different. Some of the actors were speaking in Italian, and then they were dubbing it, because it took me. Sometimes I wasn't always watching directly. It was more like a noise for a minute. So I didn't always catch the dubbing. And then I looked up and I'm like, wait a minute. They're dubbing that. Like, and it's just like sometimes dubbing can just sound comical. Well, we've learned that from making movies. Of sometimes that like that you need the atmosphere and the background noises. There's so much more happening layered into sound. So when someone is adding the voices after, it always sounds slightly separated, and then always just like the timing with their mouth doesn't usually work.
And then also
that also added a layer of comedy to me.
Their phrasing isn't always right because they get the American translation from Italian. Yeah. Like, oh god, what was it that the detective said?
I was gonna say the one thing that the cop said in the beginning, and I'm like, what was it? And I can't remember it. I'm like, who says that? Like,
it makes no sense. Funny. Because what in the Willikers or something?
Yeah. Brandon laughed his ass off through the entire
movie. I had
movie.
so much fun with this movie.
You had so much fun, but then every 5 minutes, Bob, and just kept screaming Bob. It was just like, oh my god! I never pay attention to how a name can carry weight. In certain things, or like there's certain names you can say that are going to be associated. Like if we say Reagan, we're going to know The Exorcist. Like I can't think of her in any other context. Bob is just one of those, like, why did you pick Bob?
Bob.
So like hearing that and it's them making them right, like, that's really fucking cool. That's dope.
That's a layer I didn't know that tree by.
And apparently, I think it is Fulchi, or just in like the Italian horror stuff. In like every one of those films, there is a character named Bob. But I think it actually is Fulci. It's in all of his films. There is a character. There's always a character named Bob.
Yeah. I like that idea. I always like when someone has like
like a little signature
kind of
thing.
I think the signatures are always. Well, you've always picked up on signatures in movies. That's a huge thing of the car for Evil Dead or Sam Raimi and all that stuff. Like, I love the signature stuff. I think it's really fun to kind of connect and notice. The name of Bob is an odd one, but it's a signature.
And like, they're also like constantly trading actors. So like, Mike and I were talking off camera was like, oh yeah, watching this film, it's like, oh, I seen the dude from Demons is in this film, and a couple people from Zombie were in this film. So like they just all utilize each other and all things like that, which is really cool.
Yeah. And it's for the rest of the trilogy too. Like you'll see some of the same actors from this movie in The Beyond or in House by the Cemetery, and I didn't get it at first so I just more or less recently found out it was actually a trilogy because I've always known them all separately. But because and that was the thing too, that was always the reference. I'm like, oh, you recognize these actors in each of these films.
Yeah.
And then when you find out it's actually a trilogy and you're like, okay, so how does that line up? But it's like it's a trilogy, but they're not all directly.
But they're not playing themselves.
Yeah.
I always enjoy that stuff because especially since we make movies, I think it's important when you see reoccurring actors, it gives you an idea that they all enjoy working together. There's something good that they want to come back, and I think it shows a different level that makes you appreciate it more. But it's strange realizing if in a trilogy it's kind of more like American Horror Story universe where they're returning but they're not returning as themselves and having to like train yourself to like not expect them to be their character. It's kind of fun, and then also allows the actors to have a completely different range of what they're able to do.
It's really definitely like what they always say, especially like going on sets and things like that, is that every set you work, you're applying for your next job. And to do that with these actors and bring them in, it's like, okay, like we're going to work with you again and utilize you, but like you need to now sell me on being dramatic. Now you need to sell me on being comedic and this and that. And like with them trading actors like that, like it does really well. And also like kudos to all those guys to be able to work with bilingual. Like that's impressive. To like, yeah, you can catch it a mile away, like when you watch the dub and everything like that. But like, imagine like being on those sets because they did the same thing in like Japan with Godzilla movies. They would bring in American actors and they would speak English, and then the Japanese actors would speak Japanese. And like for them to be able to, I don't know if it's like, you know, they've obviously had a translator, but like knowing the beats of like when to like kick in and like what the line was and stuff like that. It's highly impressive.
Well, I think it also impresses me with the actress with the scene that we're talking about is any actor that's willing to put themselves in a physical scene or an effect scene is always something to just be like excited about, that they're willing to put themselves like get dirty, get weird. And then especially this specific scene where it's just disgusting. And the fact that, and you said that she had veal intestines in her mouth, and like you had veal intestines in your mouth waiting, and like that kind of actress that's willing to like put themselves in that moment. And like whether like we know from our movies, like Jess is always excited for the next wild thing we're going to put her through, and I love that. I love it so much more because she's willing to do it. I almost would have. It meant more to me in the scene because it was happening to a female versus a male. Like there's something that like it's more innocent with a woman, or it's more like it's more intense because it's a young girl that's just like the shit's coming out of her. It's like insane. I almost would love to see how it impacts differently, whether this happened to a child or an older person or this or that. Like, how does that intensity of what's happening in the scene change with who it's happening with? It'd always be interesting. So I like that artistic decision that they chose this girl, this young girl, to be in it.
And like that's like an Italian thing in general too, of just young, attractive, like females. You know, like if you watch like Suspiria and things like that, like it's all about like the art and the shape and this and that.
Well, I think there's always something to be said of like, you know, that's when we were the one recent episode we did from Kill the Week was talking about The Omen, and like from The Omen of the nanny hanging herself in the very beginning, and just realizing like this is all with like this child, you know, focused on Damien being a little boy. But what if we watched The Omen tomorrow and it was a version where he's a teenager? How does that change? So there's something about the innocence of a child that makes it more demonic. And with her, there's something of like this young, attractive girl that this is happening to that really holds the power. And it's just bad shit crazy like, that this is happening. Like her whole face is just fucked up.
Oh, it's great. It is so sick.
And it's disgusting and hilarious. And it's just, I love it.
Yeah, no, definitely she's a champ for doing that. Like, because personally, for me, I mean, I'm not an actor, but I don't know if you could pay me to put veal intestines in my mouth.
Well, I wonder, like, so that's a question of, like, why choosing veal intestines? Was that the time? Was that being Italian? Was that whatever? Like, was there really wasn't other things you could
probably
put
access.
There wouldn't be things in her mouth. Like, but also, like, maybe there's something in the fact of picking something so gross. Like, it would almost make more sense if she was throwing up that you'd want something disgusting in your mouth to help trigger the reflex.
Yeah. Well, what did they use on Day of the Dead?
They were real intestines.
It was like pig intestines, right?
But that's always something I'm interested in. Is like when they use alternative things, like something that's actually like edible versus something that's disgusting. And like,
to be fair, in this case too, it's probably budget. It's like, we can get 10 pounds of veal intestines for X amount of money versus trying to make it yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I just think it's always interesting, like that thought process, especially because like when we started out making movies, we were making blood with red velvet cake mix because it was the most affordable way to do it. Yeah. So it just makes me laugh, like knowing the ingredients they used in the scene and like how it could have been used.
Well, Night of the Living Dead, they use chocolate syrup for blood.
Syrup, yeah.
You know,
I love it.
It's great. I was going to say a lot of the old black and white like horror movies, they use chocolate syrup for blood.
Yeah, but they use chocolate syrup, but then it's like, well, why didn't they go to a farm and get pig blood? You know what I mean? Like, especially like thinking of like Carrie, where it's supposed to be pig blood, right? So like, did they use pig blood or not? Like, there's just something like, I think knowing maybe the layer of the Italian film makes it feel like it would make more sense if they would go for the gruesome side. And I think it just adds to the intensity of the scene.
You gotta feel what this
But that's always the stuff. Like, we like
through.
watching movies where we get to watch it again and you catch different things. The fact that you've grown up in this movie and you still don't know why the priest hung himself.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that because then it always wants you to go back to see if there's something else you missed or to kind of grow with it. And that holds the power. That's why you're talking about it all these years later.
The last time I watched it, linking it up to the baby, I was like, all right, maybe that's why. Like, because and it's funny that you're talking about that part, and it's just like that was my newest, maybe like that was the newest thing that I started thinking of. It's like maybe it has something to do with the baby there, or because when you watch it for the first time, you're just like, it's almost like you really can't put two and two together. Like it's just, you got this going on here, you got this going on here.
Yeah, it felt like it was all different pieces happening.
Yeah, and then it's just like, so nothing is concrete in your face telling you, hey, this is why he's doing this. This is why this is right here. And so it's just like, it's all just out there, and it's just kind of up to you to figure it out almost. Like,
I enjoy it more because I think that makes it why you're talking about it all these years later, why you continue to go back to research. I feel like if they handed you all the answers, you're just like, all right, well, cool. I'm just going to go to the next movie. And that's why I feel like I'm kind of losing interest in today's film industry because I feel like they're dumbing things down. Everything is handed to you, and I'm like, well, I want to do the research. I want to watch. I want to find the weird elements of what's happening around it. And like more and more, as we watch movies, I'm getting more interested in like the set design and the details in the background, and that's so much more interesting. So I think with this, of not knowing why he hung himself, like to me, I watched and I was like, all right, cool, he hung himself. Like they didn't explain why. I don't need to know why. That to me was more just like setting up the tone.
It was a catalyst.
And I was like, all right, this sets the tone. Like when we went to see the remake for It, or the continuation of It, when they show Georgie coming out with his arm, I'm like, okay, you're showing the tone that this movie's going to be. Now we know what to expect and the level that we're going to be at. So I felt that way with The Priest. I didn't need to know why, but I see why. Obviously, after watching it for years, you'd want to know the answer.
I also think like with that baby, I think Fulchi, I think he might have done something to the kid. I thoroughly believe that. Now that you brought that up, thinking about it, like why else would a priest want to kill himself and this and that, and like the whole area being kind of possessed as well, because that's like where the gates of hell are.
Well, that's the thing, right? So like, isn't suicide like a sin? Right?
Yeah.
So like, doesn't that even play more that it's not just someone committing suicide, but it's a priest committing suicide, and that's a lot of things that's saying in that moment. Immediately, and also being the beginning of the movie. Yeah, it really sets.
I know, it's like right there, like right in the opening.
Yeah, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, and that scream, man. That opening scream, it just like every time I hear that, it makes me think of listening to the old like Halloween tapes, like when I was a kid, like and it's like for some people it may be cheesy, but like I just love it because it just it's even as an adult it still kind of creeps me out, like that first like initial scream, and you're like, oh god, like blood curdling, and but
and she is a good screamer, we can call her, especially because like, to me, the most realistic scene in this whole movie was the fucking grave diggers. Yeah. Like, oh, time's up. You're just going to leave the hole.
He's like just swinging his legs, eating his lunch, hanging out, and there's just a body.
That is the most realistic scene
I laughed at it ever. It was amazing.
And like, we're watching it, and they walk away, and then you see her wake up in the grave, and she's ripping at it and screaming. And like there was like a part of me that was hoping that he didn't hear her and she died and she was like a spirit trying to like push it forward kind of thing. But then like the fact when they cut away and it's like, oh, these motherfuckers didn't get far at all. Like the grave, like the tombstone is, or the not tombstone, the casket is still on above level. Yeah. So
but I thought, but that shot of just like the casket's broken out and you just see her screaming through. It was such a beautiful, like it was beautiful. But these are the things that like you relate to. It's kind of like nails on a chalkboard. Like you know what that sound is. You know what that feeling could be. So like that fear of being buried alive or being like put in that position is like terrifying. So like seeing her scream, like you relate to it. You're like, this is possible. Like this would happen. And like that fear, like as they're trying to save her, you also might kill her in the process of like stabbing through the casket to get to her.
Yeah, when that pitchfork went through it, and I was like,
I really expected it to kill her.
I thought it was going to.
So I was gonna say, so there's two things with that scene. So the inside of the casket scenes were filmed in Rome, and then the outside was actually filmed in New York. And so they had to redo that scene a couple times because she was reacting too much to it. To the pickaxe hitting the box.
As in, like she was really scared.
Like she kept like doing like
a flinch.
Yeah. So Fulchi got pissed off and was like yelling at her and like literally pulled her out of the coffin. And he's like, "I'm gonna do it." So he did it with a straight face because he wanted her to not react to the pickaxe. Yeah. And he's like. So he did it without flinching, and then he got out. He's like, "See, if I can do it, you can do it." Like, and then she went in, she did the scene, and I was like,
"I mean, well, it's hard. It's like a natural reaction, but that is a part of the job of the director to get what they need out of them." So I almost wonder, like, if we were doing that tomorrow, I'd be like, "Well, then I'm just not going to tell you when the axe is coming, and just surprise you with it to get a real reaction, to get something like it's." But it's hard. That's a shame.
But you see, here's the problem with
like, well, then you don't flinch when it happens. Yeah. He's like, well, I will.
He obviously didn't have faith in his actors. You have to have faith in your actors to be like, not tell them it's going to happen, because when it does happen and they get scared, they could laugh at the relief of it and ruin them and blow the whole take at the same time. Like, we were lucky when we shot Aphasia and we were doing Jess's reaction to Chrissy's makeup for the diner scene. When we made sure that when Jess first saw Chrissy, that was her first time seeing it on film, and the shock from that came. That we also trusted Jess because we told her, like, we're not going to show you the makeup. We want you to just react naturally to this thing, and she did very well and was like, like a lot of that was genuine because. With the light reaction and her like turning around, like it was just genuine.
I mean, especially like in our universe, like we have a tendency to trust our actors or to know their abilities, or our actors we might not have worked with as much. Like my biggest takeaway from Aphasia was like telling Shannon, you have one chance at a scream. Like we cannot have you screaming through this building all night. You get one scream reaction, give it everything you have. And that was such an amazing scream that you just trust her. Yeah. And you're just like, cool, I just need you to do everything you can. Now, granted, that's not throwing an axe in Shannon's face and waiting for her to react. But you just put everything in it. And I think it's about being transparent and trusting the person and saying, I need you to just give it everything you have. But also there's this thing being thrown in your face and you're laying in a coffin. And like, even though it's a set, like you're still putting a body in a coffin, and I'm sure that also invokes its own fear of like burying someone alive. Like any of those types of scenes, you're still hitting their fears. They're still, and we all know that things can go wrong on a movie set. It's something, I don't know the scene if it was a prop or if it was an actual real axe or what it was, but that fear of like, what if something goes wrong? She really could get hurt. And sometimes that's kind of a part of the excitement, but you also obviously you don't want someone to get hurt. But it's kind of wild. Like, I don't know. I loved it.
I was kind of confused with her makeup, because when you see her face revealed like through that like hole in the casket, she looks dead. Like she's like paled out, deep in colored eyes, and I'm like, so when I first saw it, I thought she was a zombie, and I was like, so is she like cognitive? Is she like she knows what's going on or something? And then. The next scene, she's just like looks perfectly normal, and I was just like, "What's going on?" This
is like a bad mortician, because the scene with the mortician when he's doing the makeup, he made them look worse.
Yeah.
Like for this girl, the actress that puked up thing, Daniela Doria, and when they're doing her little thing after she died, and he's like applying the makeup to her to make her look presentable, which I think that was Fulchi. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the mortician was Fulchi.
Might have been.
And like he just made them look worse.
Well, there's something to say. Like it was the same thing we were talking about with the mannequin with the intestines coming out of their mouth. Like it all depends on how it was going to be lit or the grain or not. Maybe we know what it's like in like film and theater makeup. Like it's going to be more dramatic than a regular makeup because you need to compensate for the light. So I don't know if they intended them to look like that or that was like something went wrong.
Probably.
Or
probably
like you needed to amplify the
thing.
Makeup, but it was comical to look at the makeup. And that's fine too. I'm like, sure, bury me looking like a clown. Let's go. I'm dead. I don't care.
When they first showed him and he was doing like the weird like faces, I thought he was going to be like the necrophiliac.
Dude, I thought the same.
Yeah.
I thought he like, especially after the scene when he's like just lingering around the room and he like looks at her. I was like, oh, don't tell me this dude's gonna cop a feel like, and then
he robs her.
Yeah,
he robs the shit out of her.
Like, and you're like, damn, okay.
He's
so
not gonna grab a titty, but he'll steal a fucking bracelet. Yeah. Like, damn. It's like,
ugh. I knew something was off with this guy. He was looking way too happy putting that makeup on. Like, it's like creepy, man. Like
it's bad enough that this girl puked up all of her intestines.
Yeah.
That now she gets horrible makeup before her burial. Her family has to see her with her younger brother
just bawling his
eyes out. That it looks like they just like super glued teardrops to his face, and now she gets robbed.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So overall thoughts of like everything, Mike, we'll start with you. Like, what are your overall, like, we know you enjoyed the movie. It really touched on, but like, what have you revisited it recently or no?
So I just rewatched it like 2 days ago.
Okay, so like what, like looking at it now as an adult, like what would you say like your overall thoughts of the film are? And the kill itself.
I think it still holds up, but like you guys were saying, like it's very comical to see it now in such high definition. Like it is the downside, but like at the same time, it's still great. It still holds up. I still think like all of the things that freaked me out as a kid still are there. Like I said, the moaning in the wind still freaks me the fuck out, and I love it. Like it's just one of those really good things. The scream in the beginning is great. I would definitely say for anyone who's into like cult horror films, like would definitely enjoy that if they haven't seen it. But
I mean, I wasn't scared of the movie, but I also think it's like looking at it from a different perspective of being older and the definition and all that. So I wasn't going in being scared. I think I really enjoyed the morbid tone from the very beginning. I think the kill specifically was absolutely hilarious. Like it was one of those things that I really pay attention to. If it goes on for 2 seconds or 20 minutes, like what's the intensity, and it goes from scary to hilarious, and just the intent, like it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I loved it. The whole thing was just comical to me. Like, I don't know, every part of it was a slow build. It was funny. Bob was just like Bob, like, and it was just, I don't know, it was very entertaining.
I kind of want somebody to do like a 10-hour repeat of just the intestine roll.
Yeah, I
like,
definitely.
You randomly find yourself on
really
YouTube at like 3 a.m. and find somebody who actually made it.
I'm on it.
Yeah, I think it was perfect. I think it was just like, I want to watch it again and kind of like look at it from a different perspective of like realizing it was like male intestines, or maybe trying to understand why he was hanging himself. Like it's definitely worth a rewatch to like get more out of it. But then I also wonder, like, especially with that scene, like what if it was shorter? What if it was longer? Yeah. And it's always hard watching some of these movies when you're older and like, trying to explain, like I explained the Goonies to someone who'd never seen it. I'm like, you had to have been a kid. Like it doesn't have the same power if you weren't a kid. So I feel like I'm missing parts of why it stuck with you. I don't know if it's going to actually stick with me, but I see why it connected at a younger age.
I was going to say I had the same experience with watching E.T. So I never got to see it as a kid. I watched it as an adult and I was just like, eh.
Same.
Like I don't see the the deal with it, but I understand it from like watching it as a child. Like I can see the appeal of it.
I watched it as a kid. E.T. specifically, I watched it as a kid, and I didn't get it even then.
No, okay.
I was like, he's not cute. Like,
I prefer Mac and Me personally, but I think that's always a part of it with our movies and the way we connect to things. Like there's something in it that you saw as a kid, how you saw it, that was more that was specific. Like I mean, I was a kid growing up watching it. I didn't know there was a second tape.
Yeah. I
had no idea there was a second VHS tape for how many years. And like that changed my entire perspective of the movie when I finally saw the other half. And it's all about how we saw it and who we were, or the grittiness of VHS versus high definition now.
Yeah. So. Like I loved it. I'm definitely going to go back and rewatch it, but I think I want to watch it on VHS. Like that is going to be like my next goal is to watch it
on VHS and dim the light.
Like on tape and things like that, because like it was like, especially like we watched it on Tubi, and Tubi had like the special edition or whatever. So I don't know if that was just like the HD copy, I'm assuming. Yeah. But yeah, next time I want to watch it, I want to watch it on tape and just like see the difference in it and see how more effective it is. Because like we've said it numerous times already, like the effect of the different formats. Like we got the like 2K release of Hellraiser. Okay. It was like Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3 on Blu-ray, and watching it on Blu-ray, and like it's gorgeous, but it's terrible at the same time. Yeah. Because like that movie was meant to be dark. Like it was meant to be a dark thing. Same thing with this movie. It's meant to be very dark. It's meant to have that weird, eerie feeling. Yeah. Because like you said, like it's very supernatural, and that's where that would kick in. And if all the lights are on, then it's not scary. It's not anything, and things like that. So like I think next rewatch, like I had a blast with this fucking movie. So much fun, and I want to hit a terrifying factor, and I think I'll get that on the VHS tape, and I would love that. And get it on VHS, and hopefully they have a big box version of it. So I can put it next to my zombie big box tape.
It's one of those ones. So the holy grail find is finding it on VHS with the original title of Gates of Hell on it. Is that's the sought after copy. And I remember, so we had a copy of it as a kid. When I was a kid, my dad had bought it because my dad was a hardcore like horror movie collector, and we had a VHS copy of it with Gates of Hell on it. And my mom was absolutely terrified of that movie, and she was like, I don't want it in the house. So I don't know what happened. No, I think my dad had lent it out to a friend of his, and he just never came back. One of those. But
I like the covers of that VHS tape is so good. Like that is such
all the different variants are good. Yeah. But I love the original one though, the zombie over the skyline.
Yeah,
that's
that was the copy that I saw. It was so cool.
We'll start wrapping it up.
Yeah. So. Mike, I want to thank you for joining us
thank you for having me
and exposing us to this new venture of Italian horror and things like that. So for this week, this has been City of Living Dead. This has been the puke scene of veal intestines out of this poor girl's mouth. You can follow more of the show by going. I'm gonna start that over. I fucked that up. Beauty of film. I can cut it. I want to thank you again, Mike, for joining us on Kill of the Week and presenting us with this movie and Kill.
No, I appreciate it.
So where can people find you, or what else that you have going on outside of this that people can follow?
So I'm in a band. We are called Astrophels. We are on Instagram, TikTok. We have a YouTube. It's just I believe our Instagram is Astrophels PA or Astrophels PA. On YouTube, we're Astrophels Band. And then you could find us on Spotify too.
Fantastic. I'll have links to all that so that people can click and follow. And what about you?
In addition to making movies, I also run a bakery, so it's all under 8213 Desserts.
And you can follow all of Minecraft. Everything's under at Jerks Productions, where we have our art show stuff, we have films and everything else. So thank you for joining us this week, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks with a brand new episode of Kill the Week.